streaming is on.
Welcome to Oki Talk today, the 7th September 2020, a Safer Globe online session with PROGIS, Ecology, Economy, Sustainable Agriculture, Forestry, Environment, Risk Management. Today we have several guests, among them Alfred Woschitz. We have content by Professor Hörman. We have Nicolette Zwartz, and we have an introductory presentation by Walter Meyer. Kindly, Walter, if you would start.
Okay, welcome to everybody for this session. I see it as a first test case that we try global to set up a negotiation and discussion for this rather, for me, very important topic. I think for a general word, a general topic called a safer globe, and safer stands for sustainable agriculture, forestry, environment, risk. And I think these things belong together, but we have to go further beyond these elements of agriculture, forestry, because we have a lot of other groups. They must be involved, and we want to go in the future also to link infrastructure on one side, and special to link humans, because we all are related to the question of environment and to the question of sustainability of our environment, what is more and more important today than it was 20 years ago. Okay, Raphael, you add on something from Professor Hörman, because he sent me his presentation because he's sick or he's in the hospital, sorry for his mother. But he sent a wonderful presentation about how to manage in future ecology balance. He is the professor for balancing at the University in Vienna and was involved in this question. And I spoke very much with him how to build up also an ecology balance. We forgot this in the past. We did business balances, money balances, everything right, but we forgot that also the environment or our nature has a high-end value. So, Raphael, you can bring this from Professor Hörman?
Certainly. So I will read the statements by Professor Hörman to start with. So we have three main questions and three main answers. So the 3 points, or the first point is, what are the common goals of ecology and economy? In economy as well as in ecology, the most important aspect are reliable and timely information, whereby timely means early enough to prepare the decisions in expectation of a critical event. The current information instruments in economy are called financial statements, and we find them on the corporate, the national, as well as on the global level. For listed companies, the IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards, governed by the International Accounting Standards Board in London, are mandatory. Nations report their assets and debts yearly to their local population, as well as internationally following the standards of unions where they are members of. The European Economic Community, ECC, for example. Ecological reports are also bound to national laws, for example, the Swiss Umweltschutzgesetz 1983, or the regulations of larger communities of nations, the guidelines governing emissions of certain substances from the EEC, and so forth. All these reports and balances are back-looking instruments. They show the development in the past and neither inform us in real time about dangerous changes, nor are reliable enough for the construction of viable future scenarios. We can read about the deficits of these meaningless but very expensive constructs nearly daily in the news. For example, the Wirecard scandal, where auditors gave unqualified audit opinions many years for what was now discovered to be a large-scale accounting scam. Walter, would you like to comment on the first question or like me to go on?
You can go on, and I think I will summarize the whole thing at the end.
Yes, perfect. So question number 2 is, Is sustainability considered in our current economical calculations, so-called financial statements? All economic and ecological reports and financial statements deal with past periods and are valid only on imaginary point in time, balance state. The future development can, as far as costs and damages are concerned, only be reported using rough estimates. Accruals, the IFRS calls them provisions, IAS 37. The definition of provisions is possible obligations and present obligations that are not probable or not reliably measurable. In the realm of ecological reporting, the cause and effect chain is most scientifically unclear and many different opinions exist, depending on scientific institutions and lobby groups involved. Therefore, we need new learning reporting systems that work in real time, as technology today enables us to do. Only by using a real-time information system, we can act timely enough to avoid damage and not only to report about the costs of damage after it has already happened. Question 3. What changes can we expect when potent technologies become globally available? In case of methodically exact measurements of pollutants, which is certainly possible using the WinGIS technology, in the financial statements, the profit-lowering amounts would shift from the provisions right to the legal obligations, and if it was known to the directors of any company already beforehand, there would quite certainly also be criminal trials involved. But let's not only look at sanctions and financial threat for the necessary change of mind to happen. In fact, we will show even large positive financial incentives that could be put in place either on a national or even an international level. For ecological reporting, suddenly real-time reporting would be an option, which also will have great positive consequences for human lives as well as nature at large, as we will shortly discuss. Last but not least, all financial valuation and reporting has one often overlooked premise: the sustainability of life on our planet. With life eradicated, there would be no one to report to audit, nor to read, nor to react to those reports. Without any observer, no observations are possible. This principle is valid in economy, in ecology, as well as in quantum theory. So that was a statement by Professor Franz Hörman.
Okay, Raphael, thanks very much for this statement. And maybe I will a little bit go into history, why we started with Franz Hörman very in depth to negotiate these questions. He is professor for balancing at the University of Business in Vienna. For many years, he's a critical thinker. And before I had my accident, I started already negotiating. And in the last years, we did a lot of different negotiations. Because maybe a little bit to me, I was involved at the Chamber of Civil Engineers in Austria since roughly 30 years in the valuation of environment, valuation of agriculture, forest land, but also more or less land that is on top of the mountain, that has no business orientation. And based on this, we did a lot of things, a lot of work, and had more or less a book where we defined rules for the whole model. How do you evaluate agriculture, forest, but also environmental question? And what we learned is that everybody, also in agriculture, forestry, were focusing more or less on business orientation, or let's call it economic results. Nobody calculated, and I started as the first one to calculate ecologic results, because the nature is producing not only cubic meter logs or tons of whatever crop. No, there's a lot of ecological values, and this is maybe higher also if you go to business-oriented dollar euro valuation. And this I started roughly 30 years ago. And based on it, I had, as an expert at the court, to evaluate this. I won a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but roughly five different critical legal things at the High Court at the end. And industries, they had big emissions where forests, more or less old forest trees, died or had a big problem, have been evaluated. And the result was not an easy to more or less to calculate, but roughly in that area as I made, it was 25% less growth. This you could easily evaluate. 30 years, 25% less growth in the forest. The ecological evaluation, so because this before, and this we won. We won against some big industries, and this was in that case more or less coal industry. So that means the problem is when you burn coal, is a lot of sulfur coming out, and when it rains on the sulfur, you have a sulfuric acid. This is tricky. For the whole globe, it's tricky because we have in agriculture, forestry, or in the nature, we have also a circulum flow. And that means this acid goes with the water further. It goes into the seas, but it needs maybe 1 year, maybe 2, 3, 5 years. But we know today the seas also become pH increased. So it's maybe not good for fish. And when we eat the fish, we get it back. So that means the whole thing is totally linked together and has to be in future also evaluated. And these are some problems. And I'm strong in this question because Corona is a part of this game. So because we have to understand why Corona started and is there a reason behind that we changed something in the nature that for coronavirus it was important. It was, let's say, good appetite for them. Okay, that to the ecological balancing need. And at the final sentence, the need is for every person responsible, for every village, for every city, and for every country. And also for the globe, because we have two main elements in the nature that has no borders. Water is running down, and wind is blowing in that direction where the wind blows. No minister has access on the water that it runs upstream, and no minister has access on the wind where he's blowing. But if you have a problem, a few days, years, or decades, the wind and the water distributes this around the globe. Therefore, ecological balancing a must and a need. Okay, that's it.
All right, perfect. So I would say that now you start with your presentation, or would you like Nicolette to go first? Walter, would you like to go first, or would you like Nicolette to go first?
I think let's try to go to Nicolette, but if she disappeared, this is again a learning process. We have to collect her again, or I start, no problem.
I would say you just start, or Nicolette is already here. It's up to you.
Okay, I can go further.
I'm still here, Walter. So
okay, you are still here. Great. Then maybe you start with your presentation. Nicolette will bring sustainable development, including a pre-competitive public-private partnership. The key question in future, it is not a public. Environment is not a public or is not a private task. It's a task of cooperative of both sides together. So please, Nicolette, when you start.
In a global society, now disrupted by a virus since early 2020, we can practice for ourselves what we preach for others. Building blocks are lying all over the planet, now that the structures as we knew them have collapsed. Who would have thought 6 months ago that a virus could rearrange so much in such a short period of time? The human-inflicted damages to the planet of the last decades have become even more visible by COVID-19. With technology, the actual state of nature, its causes and its solutions can be shown in detail. That was already the case long before COVID-19, but now everyone feels the urgency to do something about it. That is new. We have the chance to build up new structures from scratch. Structures that enhance both the economy and the ecology. I consider the meso sector, NGOs, schools, healthcare, SMEs, as the crucial intermediaries between macro, which is big money, and industry, and micro, the public. That is why I promote the use of the meso method, the elements of which are the following. M stands for mentoring, E stands for education, S stands for solution, and O stands for offer. The proper development and use of tools and technology, solution, is enhanced when it is combined with sufficient funding, offer, basic education, and ongoing mentoring. A public-private partnership is a perfect structure to encompass all these elements in a workable project. Projects in which all interests are taken into consideration and there is a win for all involved. Both economical and ecological interests can be served. In the ideal public-private partnership, the public and private macro sector provides for the funding, the offer, and the know-how via mentoring and education. The government protects the public interest via regulation and education. The meso sector finally develops the solution. The solution is tailor-made for the needs of the microsector, being the consumers, or in the south, the smallholder farmers as producers of our food. An example for the south is this model. It is based on a blockchain application and involves all stakeholders in a level playing field. A smallholder farmer pushes a button on a smart device of the local aggregator. The farmer thus creates an online identity, which is a funding requirement. With the funding, the farmer buys technologically improved inputs from the macro sector. The farmer receives information via the device and, if wished, will be trained and/or mentored. This model can be used for all sorts of industries and markets globally. I know of a few existing, successful multinational projects that are based on this model. Let's remember that the industrial macro sector has only come into existence in the last few decades. Before that, the meso sector was the main provider of the basic needs of the public. Schools, healthcare, SMEs like barbers, butchers, and bakeries. Through machinery and automation, the power and ownership consolidated and now rests with a small group in the top of the pyramid. With the meso method, and thus by making use of new tools and technologies in a proper way, the power and capital can be distributed in a more just and equitable way. All relevant factors and actors can be included, without taking away anyone's existing power or capital. Who can disagree with that? Historically, international development was done by NGOs, funded by the government. We are now more and more heading towards international cooperation via public-private partnership. Going forward, we can add the elements interdependency and rehabilitation. International consciousness of climate change and eco-damages via the UN Treaty of Paris and the more recent corona crisis led to heightened sense of interdependence. There are new possibilities to prove and calculate damages via satellites and biotechnology. Public and private parties working together to reverse negative effects on climate, while creating new markets for the daily necessities of the growing population, economy and ecology. If all current value chain players in a certain sector take part in this approach, this will ensure that the markets that are already volatile will not be disrupted by new technologies. But instead, these new technologies will help to create stable bottom-up markets. Public-private partnerships originally derive from the fields of construction and road building. Later, it was extended to the field of research and development. In other words, public money was applied in predictable technological processes with more or less controllable inputs and outputs. Since not so long, world governmental organs like the European Union, the African Union, United Nations and World Bank use public-private partnership to create societal impact. Governments, European Union, UN, World Bank, are looking for a new way of development cooperation. Public-private partnership is embraced as a promising answer. In my view, public-private partnership done right is the way forward to address the current wicked problems, like food insecurity, water scarcity, climate change, energy shortage, migration, gender inequality, illiteracy, and even pandemics. Public-private partnerships done wrong is heading for disaster, social disruption, and even new colonialism.
Thank you, Nicolette. Walter?
Okay, I have to thank Nicolette as well, because I think just her topic was one of the key questions that has to be solved. Because when I listen today on politicians about the environmental question, the answer is, oh, it's very complex. So that means at the end, it shows daily in all countries, no difference where people are coming from, that they have not yet any idea. And I would like really that we as a group try to also to link us to the politicians, to the high-end decision makers, that they start to cooperate. And especially this question is public-private partnerships on a global scale. Because at first we spoke already that we have a global problem that cannot be solved by someone alone. And on the other side, it's linked also that the politicians on a global scale have to understand how are the rules in future. And I see it rather simple. We have on one side, we have global rules that we have to accept on a global scale. We cannot change it, because what is linked with the water, what is linked with the air has a global input and output. So, and we are linked together. So we have to solve the problem and can do it only together. But it goes so far when I take, also in the small Austria, I take someone from the Ministry of Agriculture or Forestry department, and I sent him in a small village or in a small valley at the end of the country in the mountains. The local experts have more information than the big president or whatever high-end bureaucrat that's sitting in Vienna. And again, that we need to cooperate. A sample that I always use is, please try to take a Mohammed from Sahara with a camel, exchange in Yakutsk with a local Evenk or Ewain with a reindeer. Not possible for both net, because both had a long-term experience on these local things. So also when we build up software solutions, we have to have small and few global legislation or global rules, and we have to link to them many local rules. You never can someone exchange who is coming from plus 55 in a region to minus 55. Not possible, because they both will not understand the other regions. Okay, are there any questions?
From my side, it's clear. Nicolette, anything that you would like to add?
No, from my side, it's clear as well. Thanks.
Okay, then I can go further with my normal presentation that gives an overview, a little bit how technology could support the whole environment. And when you see the first picture, you see the environment in two extreme things. On top in the middle, you see a tree, and right from the tree is someone, a small guy standing. The guy is maybe 1.7 meter, 1.8 meter long, and you see the tree. And this single tree from Africa has a volume of roughly in Europe 5,000 to 6,000 hectares of trees is collected in one tree. So you see the power of the nature. And on the other side, you see a micro element that was investigated more or less. The value, how to calculate with this, was evaluated from a French Jewish guy who was living in France under pressure and started complete new ideas how to evaluate. And this is a rule what they brought out, and I will in future a little bit more bring about this. So also you have global rules. Sorry, this is not only global rules. Also, when you go further, far away on new stars or other stars, is also the same rules. So this is both nature with extreme elements. On the other side, where from the technology, you see on the left side down, I started 25 years ago with a GIS system. And the key question for geographical information today is always you have three elements to investigate. Where there's a map that you know on which location happens it. When this is a time. When happens what? And how is it changing? And we have one, and this I really recognized more in the last 2 years. The when can be a total different thing because you have a crop, this is maybe finished in 3 months. But you have on the nature sometimes timing elements, they go over 500 to 1,000 years. There's a change. So it means we human have a short change, crops have still a shorter change, and the nature might have partly a very, very long change. So the second question to evaluate is where and when happens something. And the third question is what? What do we want to do? And how does the what influence? And what is the result of the what when we were to do something? Because the result might be positive or the result might be negative. So we have to evaluate both sides. And now we exactly are back in the ecology balance. Because today we just measured the economy balancing. We never did the ecology balance. So therefore I see this is a main task in the future. And you see also two big pictures. You see on the left side, this is an ortho image. That means a precise image. This can be done today by a plane. It can be done also from the satellite in this quality already with 0.5 meter resolution. And on the right side, you see a managed picture with IT that we couldn't do 20 years ago. It's called edema, identification of images. That means out of the left picture, ortho image, we can in seconds produce a right image. This tells us exactly what is there. And when you see on top of this mountain, you see forests with different elements in the forest, Picea excelsa or large trees or different sorts of trees. You see alpine meadows. You see downstream also elements where the ski drivers are down. You see some village on top, etc. So this can be done automatically. That means we can evaluate the nature within seconds in all different elements, also in the good or in the bad side the elements. That means I show you later some picture if a thing is growing well or growing bad. So this is more or less that where technology can go today.
So, dear Walter, what I would like to ask you at this point, just to make sure the presentation is well visible, if you may actually end your screen share, Freigabe beenden, and restart it once again, so that it is visible on full screen on the stream as well.
Okay, sind wir belaufen. So maybe I should start from the beginning, or do we get it like that?
Just one moment. I'm seeing it on the screen. So below you have Freigabe beenden.
Okay, then we close the whole thing.
And now again Freigabe starten.
Freigabe starten. Aha. Now I'm back here. We can start it again. Do you see it again?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So did you see the image before, or should I repeat something?
No, the image was visible. It's only a matter of full screen, but this is the, technical test apparently. So
Okay,
what I would say
then we
is you
leave
just
this
go on
image.
for
It
now.
just shows once more with one small sentence. With information, we can come to better decisions. This is the key question for me. We need the information to make better decisions, because today the information is in many cases done on the wrong manner. People don't understand the information, or they do the information to make decisions for their target, not for a general target. Economy could be a single organization target. Ecology is a common target. How do we split this up in future? So let's go to the next picture. We are partnering in some European Union projects. I don't go into detail, but it showed already that we started, when I think foodie, we finished 3 years ago, and in the moment we are on 3 projects, Earth observation for agriculture, the integration like Oikstat and polyrural of how can we communicate the technology and how can we cooperate outside in rural areas. Then we come to our technologies. Just we see we have on one side in future to have a back end. Again, what is common to everybody? And this is the geographical data. This is a satellite image of a region. If you go down a more detailed image. And on the other side, it's alphanumeric data. What are the costs of machines? Which fertilizer are available? Who is producing or supplying it? Which chemical contents does it have? What is positive or negative? Which costs do we have? Which pesticides we have? Which varieties of crops we have, and which methods? This must be built up once by maybe the public side or a public-private cooperative side. Because I cannot expect that every single farmer, if it's small or big, and for a smaller is still more complex, he is building up his own geodata and his own alphanumeric data. No, this is absolutely a common task for a high-end organization, public or private, or better public and private. And then when we start with the technologies, I jumped down 20 years ago, or 25 years nearly ago. On the bottom, we have to start, and we need in a country 2 to 3 years to build this up. The fundament is, at first, it is learning and training. Then we need to have an information, basic information, that is the satellite image today. If I need more, it could be a local drone image. And with the drone image, I can, with statistic, with a lot of mathematics, do with some investigations, do very much for an entire country. So the fundament is the geographical information. The second step is farm and or forest management. As I studied both, for me was always a conflict. I have agriculture and forestry, 2 diverse education. No, it's one nature. And the farm and the forest doesn't stop on the border. No, there's an influencing between both sides. So we have to have already in agriculture and forestry an integrative task that we have to understand both sides as they will influence each other. And we have products since many years. It's DocuPlan, that means we can plan and manage it better. And we have forest office. And forestry, as forest is big, we started already in Austria very early to have a lot of statistical samplings, because I cannot count also in the small Austria every tree. Then I have too many trees. Nobody can count them. But I can work with statistics. That means I have a picture with 0.5 meter resolution from Austria, and then I have small investigations with a statistical sampling for smaller regions. And these I can enlarge, and then I have a statistical result for a complete country or region with 95, with 99%, depending on how many investigations I do. So that means you have to have precise mathematical and statistical know-how. It's again a public. That means the own forest or agriculture is a private task. The whole management of a complete country or region is a public support. But both can work together. In the past, we made a public map for the whole country or for a region, and we make private maps, and nothing worked together. This is not the future we need, because It's a cooperative task, so we have to do it together. The next what we started is already also 20 years ago. I show later a project that is 20 years old about logistics. Logistics is based on one side on the mapping and on the other side where has what, when to be done. A tractor has to move. We have the tractors today. That's not only in the task of a tractor company, but a good high-end tractor can manage 500 hectares today. The average farmer in Austria is 2.5 or maybe today 4 or 5 hectares. So should the farmer buy 0.01 tractor? No. That means logistics is an absolute deep understanding of cooperative tasks. With one tractor, I could support 10 or 20 farmers. Another has a harvest machine, he could support 5 or 10 farmers. So it means it's again, the deep in logistics is very, very deep involvement of cooperative tasks. And the so-called machine cooperative, we started decades in southern Bavaria and in Austria. And when I go later, I show you a map. The cooperative question started when the nature is tricky. Because when the nature is tricky, as it is in the mountains, you have to cooperate better. This is more or less logistics. That means it's technology and the cooperative question. Then when you have this in a region built up, and this can be totally standardized, you need a map, you need the management tools or forest or agriculture management tools, and you need the logistics. And the logistics you have to have on a center logistic tool and on a mobile tool. That means you need communication between, because the tractor driver has to know where and what he has to do. That's logistics. Then the next step is precision farming. That is in the moment ongoing, but we started already very early too. That means a field is not a unique thing. No, here you have many stones, it's growing bad. On another way, you have a lot of stones, you have a few stones and a lot of excellent soil. Fine, it's growing better. But do we manage it like that? Do we put fertilizer or pesticides as they are needed? No. We spray them everywhere. That means we have a cost and means an economic and an ecologic need to optimize the whole thing with precision farming. And that means of fertilizer, pesticide distribution, seed distribution, or later also in harvesting. I show you later technologies where we know long before something happens, we know more about the field. Where is how much growing, etc. And this will reflect and must reflect the activities that has to be done on the field. And then again, what I mentioned at the beginning already, we have to have an environment management, a risk management, and also what we did for the Austrian government is land consolidation, because for a farmer, it's not funny if one field is 10 kilometers in the south and the other field is 10 kilometers in the north. No, we have to optimize where he is living and that he has the fields so that with less logistic costs and distribution costs, he can optimize his land better. And at the end, he must have also an ecological valuation, not only an economic valuation. So that the front end, and let's say in 2 to 3 years, you can in a country build up. It will be a lot of education need in a wide scheme. So you need to have education for different groups. And how these groups again can cooperate. This is the ministry, this is the farmer, this is to the end, the two ends of the group, but it's also the tractor driver, it is also someone who is supporting or gives advice to different groups, to the minister or to the farmer, who is building up advisory tool, who is building up communication between machines and machine cooperatives. So you see, it's also the whole building up, a lot of cooperation needs of all the different parties together. That's more or less how we build it up. And in the moment, we are on the level of precision farming and very far with new technologies that we can integrate environment, risk management. Land consolidation, we did already, and technologies are here. Okay, any question to it? Did you hear this?
Yes, I would say it's clear so far. And just what certainly rings true to me is the idea of reducing logistical costs and also combining both the living conditions of the farmers and their actual production fields, of course, makes great sense, especially today.
Absolutely. I think, but you see, there are big tasks that nobody can do alone. Therefore, I always mention it's a cooperative question that has to be done together. But not only farm cooperatives, no, all the different sectors have to cooperate together because the different sectors had different targets. But at the end, we have one target to create, because what is a farm or a farm and forest producing? Food, oxygen, and water. We did not calculate. The food we calculated must be cheaper and cheaper. Oxygen and water we did not calculate. It's here. And this is linked how many inhabitants we had on the globe. Sure, with Adam and Eva, we had 2 inhabitants on the globe. And we had the first 1,700 years after Christ, we created 1 billion. The next billion we have in 12 years. So we have to organize things better. Okay? Then I go further. It's again the where, the when, the what, but it's also linked more or less a good planning and excellent implementation, and to have a control of the implementation of the different sectors. When we don't do this, we will fail. And I think in the past we failed. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Corona or other problems today. The next step is we create benefits, ecological, economic benefits. And there's a lot of different products. There's roughly 20 products we developed in the last 25 years. Again, it's the GIS for geographical information, it's farm management, it's forest management, it's logistics, it's the GIS in different sectors. Not everybody needs all details. Someone needs just one information. And again, the key question for technology means we have data wherever they're coming from. And out of data, we have to create information. And some people only have to make precision decisions or precise decisions. So that means the software has to be built up for different user groups a little bit different. I go a little bit through that you see some pictures of the technology. The GIS started, we were the first one who started with the so-called, at this time it was so-called hybrid system. You see on top of the left, you see vector analysis. That means it was just the border lines of the different farmers or the different owners, like also public owners from the road, etc. Then this picture in the middle, you see already what I've already shown before. That means a map. Where do we have to do what? There's a when management. That means on top you see a timeline. It goes endless to the left, it's the past, and it goes more or less planning or observation, what will be done and what could happen in the future. We always calculated both sides, the history, and based on the history, we have a changing future. And the third element on top is more or less the objective data about fertilizer, pesticides, machines, blah, blah, blah. But this right corner is totally different in all countries, not the same in all countries. We have to verify it. So then you have the forest office, it's just the same. I have here a vector map. When we started, it was a vector map. Today we have vector and raster maps and a lot of different things that I come a little bit later to it. Then you see the logistics. We also started as our biggest customers were the German machine cooperative. They have 160,000 farmers as members, and we had a central station. We did it long ago, more than 23 years, and they had mobile stations. That means you have experts, they set up a system. You have a central station that's more or less organizing the technology for a region, for 1,000 farmers in average in Germany. And you have mobile devices. This has to be integrated. All three have one task to do or several tasks to do, but they all are linked together. So you have to build this up. What is today known, we did this already many, many years back. Then this is a picture of precision farming. Here in that case, I'll show you later satellite images, but in that case, you see different colors. The different colors show different results. It's also an old picture, 15 years ago. This is precision farming, means how do we evaluate a piece of a field where it is growing well, it is growing bad, and where we can optimize everything what's coming on this field. and how much will be the benefit and how much will be the cost and how will be the environmental impact if we do something on a piece of a field. And then the last one is we evaluated during the last decade, there's a lot of other technologies. They all work together. You see on the right side the weather stations. Every farmer needs to understand how was the weather in the past, how will be the weather in the future, and based on these two types of information, he makes his decisions. But you have to build it up. And it has to be seen on the map as well. It doesn't help if you have a weather station. And what happened in Austria, that we had 10 different public structures, they all built up their weather station network. No, there's one weather only about the country, about the region, but this is totally different in small regions. So we have to integrate again things together, that because the farmer in Carinthia, in a part of Austria, doesn't be interested in the weather situation in the east part of Austria. He's interested on his location information. And on the other side, the minister or a tourism region needs from a complete region the weather. So, but it's the same thing. We have to integrate these things. So the next picture, you see the mobile devices. That means we set up, we called it MobGIS. So it's a mobile GIS that has the technology implemented on a machine. We can do this in future on the telephone. We show maps on the telephone, and everybody knows the information that is distributed to him also on the telephone. And there you see also the land consolidation that we did for the government years ago, but it is not yet implemented in the whole country, but step by step it goes into that direction. And then this is a picture that shows a little bit about the environment and natural risk management, because these both questions are linked together. If you make an economic wrong decision, it might increase the risk and has an ecological impact. And that is a risk. And the main risk is linked to the time. Is the risk coming in 5 minutes or in 2 hours or in 3 days? Then we easier recognize. If the output of the risk is in 5, 10, 20, 100 years, we don't take care about this. That means, again, the time management and risk management are linked very close together. Similar things we did on the animal side, that we also have to know what is a cow or a sheep or what they're eating, when they are on meadow. We have today GPS coordinates in an earmark, and we know the number of the cow and the number of the animal. But one thing is on food, again, important. And I found a book out of the early 60s. We don't live from crop or from meat. We live from fat. We live from other elements that are linked to a meat, but that are also linked to plants. And sometimes it's the curve that we take over the beef, for example. It's a question of proteins. Proteins I get more. So the body does not need the elements of the cow. The body needs fat, protein, and carbohydrate, and some microelements. That's the key question. Did we optimize this? No, we never did it, because it was nice to have cows here and to sell cows or to sell milk. But do you believe that we have a milk that is coming from a bad managed region, grass that is not healthy, that the milk will be healthy? No, that's a circular flow management question. We have to investigate this. And at the end, two pictures about the animal census that we started in some countries to plan it. So that means the registration and the GPS coordinating of all different elements should be controlled. And again, the last picture is stakeholder cooperation. We have many suppliers, and at the end, I say very simple, between farmers and end users, that means consumers, we have a lot of organizations in between. And as long as we don't control the quality of the food, we will fail. Someone is producing the food and someone is eating the food. In between, it has to be too optimized that we know what we eat in future. Because I think several illness is linked to maybe not quality or high quality of food. Okay? Any questions to it?
No, it's clear so far. Thank you.
It's clear, good. Then we go to the next picture. I had already mentioned one Jewish colleague from France, and I had the luck that you see in the middle, there's an instrument that was developed by a professor of mine. He was an elder guy, excellent. It is that I know today, it's a relascope, it's called relascope, with simple mathematical tool, that's relascope. I can measure how many cubic meter of trees are in a forest. Now you have a tool, wonderful, you can sell it. But I learned from this professor, when I have the distance from my eye to my thumb, I know the width of my thumb, I turn around and I know the haze of the tree. I have a mathematic formula in my brain that tells me here is 264 cubic meter. Simple. This mathematical rule goes also in the small elements further, linked to several mathematical tasks, as we have something that is a general mathematical rule of all the elements, plants, animal, etc. So you see a nano element on top right, and you see the tree. The principle mathematically is the same on the micro or nano element or on the big tree, but the same mathematic behind. So it means we have to understand better mathematics, and this is a question of information management. We could not do this 20 years ago because it's really big data was coming out there. And we have to learn how to get this big data in a management system integrated that the different people, the different structures can work with this type of information and make out of this better precision. But better precision that must be integrated. So here's just very quick to show some pictures that show the identification of images. On the left side, you see a standard orthophoto. It doesn't give you any information. But the pictures on the bottom, you see different colors. Someone evaluated what has to be measured. Pop, 20 seconds later, you have a ready image. On the right side, you see a part of village of an ortho image. On the right side, on the bottom, you see the result of this image. So the minister would send 20 people around for 6 weeks when they had. We do it in 20 seconds. So that means suddenly you get a total new type of information very quick. And when I speak in Africa, you can build up a cadastre very, very quick. You see one of the pictures on the side. This is already, I explained, this is a more or less a mountain here nearby from village. This is the top of the mountain. It goes up to close to 2,000 meters. So here's the result of identification of images. You get it in a few seconds. Next picture is again what I've shown already, the south of village. You know the type of trees, you know where is planting, where is meadows, where is fields, where is houses, and where is gardens, etc. And this goes now towards precision farming. You see in the south of village some small meadows, and if you see the right picture, you see different colors. And every color means a different growth rate. So suddenly you can automatically measure, quantify, and make decisions based on this precise information. Because where it's growing more, the soil will be better and maybe it needs a little bit more fertilizer. Where it's growing less, the soil must be not so powerful than on the top side. So again, transfer this data to information. The next, this I've shown a minister in Africa. He was astonished because on the left side, you see the image. On the right side, we calculated where's forest, where's meadows, where's good growing meadows, bad growing meadows, etc. So this we have known in a few seconds. How geography is linked to bad things in the moment we have a problem of corona. When I see the left global map, you see exactly where there are many corona. Not my map. It was a map. This is published by the World Health Organization, but just in March they found it. In April you didn't get it anymore. And today till August no map occurred. But you see exactly where corona come in the US, in Europe, and in Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea, etc. Where we have a lot of emissions from different industries. In Africa, very few. South America, a little bit more. They started already. So this shows me how the geography and the emission of industries, what I started to do in Austria 30 years ago. And some people were not happy if I did this. But today, Corona is just the same. For me, tuberculosis, dying forest, and also cancer, and now Corona is the same. If you have too much emissions from chemical elements, that I don't say it's this and this, no, it's a mixture of chemical elements. It's not only one element. Because also if you are able to drink 3 beers because you are drunken, some can drink 5 beers, but when you drink a beer and the schnapps and the wine and the liquor in between and mix them a little bit, you don't know. You have different influences on your body, and then you don't know what really happens. This is the same map. It shows us on the left side, bottom left, you see the Corona cases. On the right side button, you see coal and oil power stations. I mustn't explain anything. On the top 2 images, you see, because this button gives sulfur acid, because SO2 plus water, H2O, gives H2SO4, H2SO4. This is sulfur acid. And when you burn coal or oil or also gas, it has less, but it has, and you burn these elements with high temperature, you create NOx, and when it's raining on NOx, you have nitric acid. So pop, this map shows. The top maps is from a Sentinel, a European Union satellite. You see in the middle, Italy a little bit, this shoe of Italy down there, and you see them red elements. Where is it? Where you have a lot of traffic, a lot of emissions, a lot of industry. There you find a lot of NOx. That's it. That's the result of it. So you see the link of emission of ecological evaluations and the mapping and the GIS. What suddenly you could do. The next images show a little bit how much satellites can help us. I just go very quick now. We have a resolution on 20 meter. When I started, you had the plane resolution, 20 meter, 10 meter, then it came down to 1 meter to 0.5. And today we are on 0.5 or some military elements, but maybe we can use them for else, go down to 1.0 meter. Wonderful. What has been done on these images. But before, do you have any question for the things before?
Thank you, makes sense. And I think the visual presentation makes it quite easy to understand. So
okay, that's good. Thank you very much for the support, because it's not easy to learn how you make complex things easy to understand for everybody. This was a big learning process for me too. On the left top picture, I got a satellite image from colleagues with 0.5 meter resolution. And I was drawing the different elements. What is a forest? What is young and old forest? What I, as an expert, could visualize. What is a meadow? What is a road, etc. And on the right side, I got a map. Back. In few seconds, you can do it yourselves. That means you see on the bottom of the right, top right picture, you see the different colors. What does the color mean? And then it was digitized. You see the result. It shows exactly where the road, where are the meadows, where are the forests, where are old forests, good forests, etc. Where is a mixture? So fine, this can be done in a few seconds. And when you go down left in the picture, this shows in a different zoom step, more detailed on a field. You see also on the field different elements. You see the forest in the fields or in between now. You see some forest elements in a meadow. You see some good or bad growing elements. And the fundament is the high resolution image that evaluates the different colors. And based on the color, I can decide. That means when the color point is 0.5 meter, I can decide what I can decide with 0.5 meter resolution. That means I see every tree that has a problem. No problem. I see the whole field. I see everything what is 0.5 meter. But today we have technologies, and the human investigation, please, is the same. If I investigate a satellite image, or if I investigate a drone image that goes down to 1 millimeter, or also when you have computer tomography, is the same. That means with such a small resolution, you can suddenly evaluate elements in portion of time much before. Because the problem in the nature, if you have cancer in the lungs, if you have a sick tree in the forest, it is shown much earlier with better information. When you have the whole tree down, Bob is maybe 3 months later. When you have your cancer, it starts not big, it starts with a micro element. And if you have big, it's maybe too late. So exactly this is the model where I say in future we can evaluate based on images with different resolution for agriculture, forest, or for the environment, but also for humans and also for infrastructure elements. If a road has some problems, I detect 3 problems and say, please make a map out of the road. You have everything done. You see, this is a total new task for information management. Never had been possible before because you create giant big data. And how we can work with data, this is my job that I did since 30 years ago, how to evaluate the future. And in the moment, I have roughly 60,000 data ready from 193 countries. How many agriculture, how many fields, how many meadows, how many forests, but also how many business data like gross national products, etc. How many problems with coronavirus, we did this also, as long as we got the data, how many problems, how to evaluate this. That means suddenly I can roughly evaluate on every country what happened in the past, what will happen in the future when I link the emission data. I made already calculations because when you evaluate and when I link emission, there's a clear, if I have a lot of emission, I will have a lot of problems. If I have few emissions, I have less problems. But again, for the future and already now, we have a circular flow and exponential growth. That means when some minor changes are here, temperature is, example, half a degree, 1 degree, 1.5 degree increase, and the expert at the United Nations tell us it should stop at 2 degrees. It will not stop because they have no influence on it, very simple. But then you have a beetle growing. But the beetle growth is changing at 0.5 degree. Why? Because with 0.5 degree increase, the beetle is laying 500 more eggs in a period. So you have 500 multiple 500 multiple 500 multiple 500. It's 2 degree increase of the temperature. But then you have few billions of small animals. They might be dangerous. This is exponential growth. And the exponential growth we have on some beetles here in the forest now, also in Austria, and we have also corona is nothing else than an exponential growth. And the same problem for the future that we have to evaluate is the water. Because I have a simple example. When we eat all the pills that sick people eat, the result of the pill land in the toilet and at the end they land in the sea. And then partly we get it back with the fish or not. So what happens? Circular flow of the nature. We have to be much more careful and people don't understand the links of the nature today. This shows a map of Carinthia. Let's stop once. Let's make a short break. And do you have any questions to the past?
Thank you so far. Makes sense to me, I would say. And also the correlations you made, I mean, in terms of Earth changes, of course, what we also always have, what I like to bring up, even though we have ideas such as power law or exponential growth and changes in the environment, of course, we know nature is very complex. So usually also we have some kind of negative feedback loops as well, which of course may or may not be included in these calculations as well. Just as you explained with the beetle, for example, assuming laying more eggs, I can only assume that other nature changes would occur that may in some way, shape or form balance out this development. And of course, the more complex the system becomes, the more complex it may also become to calculate or to predict what can happen.
Absolutely correct what you say. And the key question is based on it, it's a big learning process. We don't know everything, how it links together. On the globe, I always explain, we have 2 million sorts of plants and animals. We have from the small, it's in between plants and animals. That means everything what is under structure of fungi. There's a giant element. We know from the fungi roughly 2-3% of all of the fungi. But the fungi is a powerful nature element, please. Without fungus, they came out of the sea when there was only water on the globe. We had no destroying of the rocks into soil. They did it. The fungi did it. They run through the rock and then they made step by step, but they needed maybe 5 million years or 10 million years. I don't know it. I was not part of this game. But it means, again, back on this map, what we see here, this is the cooperative in Carinthia. Carinthia has, on the left side, we have mountains between 2,000 up to 4,000 meters, and on the right side, you have hills and flat, where you have a tricky nature. The willingness of people to cooperate is big. All the red elements are cooperatives. That means when you go, the farmers here in these regions, on the ground, they have single farms. On top of the mountains, they have cooperatives. Why? If you go on a mountain alone and don't come back, nobody finds you. You have to go minimum 2 people on a mountain. Otherwise, you have a problem, or you might have a problem. So this is the cooperative question. It shows in detail how it's coming from. This is explained now. And then you see some pictures that we made also with scientific people, a soil investigation, and out of soil investigation, we made soil maps. When we don't have soil maps, we should create them, because every soil has to be managed a little bit different. It's not a unique soil. And this based on the soil management, we made also the land consolidation. Or this, again, I shown in Africa, a cadastre I can make. We need it in Austria for a cadastre 75 years. I can make it in 6 months now. I just have to more or less the farmers motivate a little bit. And at the end of the game, I tell the farmers, when you have a stick in the ground and give me GPS coordinate, maybe you get some small support for your ecological evaluation. But I have to measure it and I have to know where is the field. You can believe me that this stick between neighbors needs 20 minutes that it is in, and they say, here's our border. When you don't have this, you have a struggle, and that needed in Austria 75 years. So based on it, you can make from the cadastre a ground book, an ownership, and then based on the ownership, you can define who is responsible what for an economic task and an ecological task. And we have in Austria a funny situation that in 1975, we created, and I have some, I wouldn't say struggle, but some discussions, we said everybody is allowed to go into the forest. Not destroy the forest. If there's young plants, he is not allowed to go. That means this is a critical situation. But that means if you destroy a forest, you also have an influence on every Austrian. Best regards to the lawyers. Someone has to evaluate this. Why the forest was destroyed and why every Austrian cannot go back into the forest. This is a question. It was a big, tricky regulation that not everybody was happy about this, and more in the past we did not have information. In the future we will have better information. So this brings more or less the cadastre, and the land consolidation brings to the owners a precise information where responsibility of this land is important and can be managed. So this is some more question. I can send you the whole thing. It's just yesterday, the problems that we had, where I started 30 years ago, it was local problems. Today we have a global problem. In between, it was regional problem. The technologies I explained already, we have solutions since many years, but they are growing and growing. And the key question is, for me, we have to have safer stakeholders, and the monopoles and the oligopoles had a problem. And when I later explain a little bit of the energy, we have energy, the solar energy input on the globe is 10,000 times higher than the whole energy use on the globe. Just is decentral. It's not centralized. Everybody is getting sustainable energy. It's the sun. When you have 6 square meters on a house, one guy has all energy that he needs. if you have 9, because you don't need double it, 2 people in the house have everything. And you have not only sun, you have also wind. I must not have a giant wind turbine. No, can have a small one. So besides water, you also can have the solar, the wind, and the water. Also the water, if it's raining and you pump water on top, the water will on the flow back bring 95 of the energy back. That means everybody has solar, wind, and water. A little bit more, a little bit less. In the Sahara, you have more sun than on the North Pole, but we can optimize this thing. And thus you will find a colleague that just called me, he cannot come today, but with the energy. We have to link the energy cases on a global scale. And we will have big energy users and small energy users. But small energy is coming on every square meter. Why don't we optimize this? We can do it. It's again a question of information management. So this is some philosophical and some political and global task to it. And that means one of the key questions will be the global education. Without education, not possible to do it. And on the other side, we have to see how big is the task. We have 4.5 billion a global globe. 4.5 billion years on the global globe. And the people, we are here 100,000 years. So sorry, the globe will have learned a little bit more than we. And from the 100,000 years, we are 2 or 3, or we use the Egyptians, take 5 or 6,000 years. We are as humans in a learning process. So that means, do we know everything? No, we don't know. 150 years we have industry, and they started with coal, with oil and the gas, we increased, but we created also problems. And we created damages that I evaluated already 30 years ago. Some big guys had to pay. Not everybody was happy about this. And the rural areas, as mentioned already, they have energy any amount, but not centralized. And the last I didn't mention is a geothermal. When you dig a hole 100 meters down, you have the cost is 1, and the return of invest from energy is 4. You cannot do it alone. But again, as a cooperative, you could easily do it. Rather simple. Maybe 5 farmers together, or in a village, maybe 20 or 30 people together can dig one hole and then they have energy. But some people don't like it. This is a key question we have to do. So the technology will help us, and we have new problems that are in front of the door or partly already here. I mentioned already the natural cycle, the exponential growth with some samples, and we have a third giant problem coming: interception. When it's raining, you go under a tree. If not, if there's some big thunderstorm coming, then it's not so good. But interception means a tree buffers 20, 30, 40, 50% of the water. You don't get wet. What happens with this water? It doesn't flow down. You have less floods. But the rest, what is between the needles on top, goes back, and it changes the humidity. And the humidity is changing the biodiversity. Sorry, people speak about the biodiversity, where it's coming from. Less water in the air is changing the biodiversity. Then we have as a result with the interception. Less interception is when you cut all trees, and we have done in Europe cut roughly 40, 50% of our trees. And when you have less needles on a tree, then you have less interceptions. Nobody talks yet about it. Giant problem. And based on it is the climate question. But the climate question, please, everybody speaks about CO2. Wonderful, because everybody is exhausting CO2. But the problem is not CO2. CO2 is a result of something. And you have to decide between causes and effects. And we are managing on the globe the effects and don't search the causes. But sorry, in future we have to search the causes and don't make business on the effects only. That's it. And Solution Global, we have to integrate the whole thing. We have to understand it together. So global objective is clear: CO2 buffering, resulting or more or less repairing the past damages, more or less make sustainable energy, cooperating networks, large and small suppliers, stop the pollutants, and think what wind, water, etc. can support in distributing of bad habits. Education and training is one of the key questions. Therefore, this colleague did not come. He was at our seminar already a couple of months ago. I see art, education, sport, very, very important to get a common sense back. Today, we have only experts. Expert is sometimes not okay because he doesn't understand the other experts. But some natural elements are linked together. So the expert cannot support. Therefore, we build up more or less two clubs, Club of Ossiach Education and the SDCC Club, cooperation between the different parties. Tomorrow, winners will be who needs better technology, who makes more education, who makes more emergence. Emergence is a new sector, but I call it the common sense, because when you do something negative, it might be positive for you. It might be negative for the neighbor. And the neighbor can be a country neighbor, can be also the next farmer, can be some other elements of the globe. So we have to do more or less to set it up in a totally different manner. So that means when we want to create long-term sustainability, we need also new business model, large international organization, large financial partners, working with Ecology globally. All 193 countries have to be involved, 250 cross-global experts. This is a business model we set up now. We need global experts, we need the humans, we need the education, we need the doctors, etc., because it's integrated. And we have to have IT partners, strong partners in the different regions. And public-private partnership, as already was managed together. So this is more or less one of the last slides. It shows a little bit cooperation. Some elements, as you see down in the middle, this is a cooperative task from him. On the other side, you see what I have mentioned. In many cases, cooperation will be the winning tool for the whole thing. And back to the trees from the beginning, big tree, again, this tree has roughly what more or less a forest on 5,000 hectares has on wood. This single tree has. So that's big. And in the middle, you see a frog, on top of the frog, a mouse. So this is a support, this is an ecological support. And then the picture where we have started from the beginning again. So maybe we have 5-10 minutes time for discussions, for negotiations, or for questions.
All right. Thank you, Walter. At this point, I would like to ask Nicolette whether there's anything you would say that has maybe been left out from your side, or any comments you have about the prospects of this technology and approach. If you're available, Nicolette, kindly unmute yourself. All right, does not appear that way. Then I would just ask you, Walter, whether there are any of the questions on the script that have not been answered yet through your presentation right now. So, but I think
there was missing one colleague I mentioned already. Therefore, I say the energy question is a very important question, because one of the ecological problems is the energy. Because very simple, the energy is the hugest percent of CO2, but of many, many other elements is the industry. I don't want to burden the industry. Everything okay. We need, and this I mentioned 30 years ago in a book, we need an integration of ecology and economy. But that doesn't mean that we just have to accept everything. We have to define rules, how they cooperate, that one element that we need, also the economy, but does not destroy the other one. And therefore, one big element is Mr. Neumann, who excused for today. Mr. Neumann, and that's of interest, he is more or less the chief of the Global Energy Board. Since 25 years, he's like me, a civil engineer in Austria, and he started together with United Nations. They have a link now to 183 countries. They have 25,000 energy saving technologies built in, and they had every year a global energy award that was from Mr. Gorbachev to many, many well-known people on the globe. Energy, and he came up when I started negotiations that in future we have to use energy representing the whole emission question, and we have to use the ecology. And more or less the written case is a professor who linked this with an ecology balance. This is for the end one of the most important things. And on the other side is we have global objectives. We have to link, and again repeat it, education, training, cooperation is a must. Who will manage this better will be a tomorrow's winner. Who managed this wrong will try to be the same as many of the top people have been in the past, in the last 3,000-4,000 years, but they all disappeared. There's no Egyptian pharaoh, there's no Roman Caesar, there's only very few kings or queens around. Also, the communists went down after 70 years, so the time is shortening. Pharaoh was 3,000-4,000 years. Roman guys were 1,500, 2,000 years. Kings and queens were 600-700 years. Communists were 70 years. So the time is shrinking, how you can be more or less on the winning side. So that tomorrow's winner are different one. These people, they support long-term sustainability. Otherwise, we will not be long-term here because the globe has other topics. The globe has the nature, they have time. They are waiting 10,000 years, fine. And then they kick off something because it was not okay what we did. Okay? That more or less the final thing. More, I have maybe a few words. We plan in the next 2-3 months a complete 1-week seminar for people of the globe. And therefore, we will have also a lot of different sessions like this here. This today, it was a training session for me, but we'll learn how to fail us and we'll make a better communication. I think the whole thing is, how do we have to communicate what we do now? A lot of people would like to listen. And when we have now this 1-week seminar, we will make the technology, we will make the economic output. This is new, I didn't speak about this. What is the amount of damages, the fundament to create or to evaluate this damage, and how can I support this, and how can other sectors integrate? This is more or less the final thing for me to say.
All right, perfect. Anyhow, asking about this training session would have been my last question, so thank you for answering. So in this case, I would say thank you everyone for listening or for watching the first Safer Globe online session, PROGIS, Ecology, Economy, in your presentation by Walter Meyer. And yeah, we will come back with more sessions and more information. And I would just like to thank you once again. Also thank Nicolette for joining. And we're looking forward to the next session and the next guests.
Okay, I also have to thank to everybody for listening and for having interesting comments to it. And again, it's also for us a learning process. Day by day, we get more clever. And it's a question of my age. That means you cannot be wise when you are 25. You have to learn a lot of things. And maybe with the age, if you have a chance, you can become wiser and wiser. So this is more or less the topic. We have to go, but all together we have to go in this direction. Okay, thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience, and may we all come together, recognize we are living here together, and improve our situation. Thank you so much, and catch you all next time.